28th May 2023 is a very important date for all IAS aspirants as the UPSC is all set to conduct the preliminary examination. It is on this date that your years of aspiration, months of hard work will be put to test. I'm sure most of you would be worried about your current affairs revision and practice. But you need not worry because we at BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS, we shall be bringing back our flagship Target Prelims 2023 free crash course starting from the 24th of April. In these sessions, we shall be covering more than 900 important current affairs topics through MCQ-based discussions. These sessions will contain in-depth explanations and expert tips to help you ace the exam. As always, these sessions shall be free on our YouTube channel, and all you have to do is to subscribe to our YouTube channel. See you on the 24th of April.
Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. A very warm good morning to everyone. I hope all of you are doing good. I welcome you back to today's session of the Hindu Newspaper Analysis. As you know, every single day at 10 a.m. we bring here for you live analysis of the Hindu newspaper for the day, where we discuss important news stories from both the mains and the prelims examination point of view. I hope all of you have now made it a habit and included in your timetable that every day sharp at 10 a.m. you have to attend these classes. Also reminding you, as soon as this session ends, we have a quiz on our Telegram channel based on the articles that we discuss here. So if you have to revise whatever you study here in 1 hour, you have to go over to our Telegram channel, attend that quiz and see if you're able to answer those questions or not. Before we begin today's session, there's a very important announcement that I need to make. As you know, BYJU'S right now is running the Target Prelims 2023 All India Prelims Test Series. As a part of this initiative, we have decided to open our full-length test for all of you. Now, all of you can give this full-length test and assess your preparation for the UPSC Prelims examination. This will be an online test, so you can give it at the comfort of your own home. The link to register for this test is given in the description of the video. The test will be available starting from 23rd of April at 9:30 a.m. It will be available till 25th of April, so you can give it till then 11:30 a.m. Please make sure that you do give this test because this is the best way for you to check your level of preparation. How prepared are you before the prelims examination actually comes across? You will also be able to test your level of preparation against the other candidates as well. So now, let's come back to where we were. Let's see what are the topics that we are going to be discussing from today's Hindu newspaper. These are the important topics that we have taken up. From the mains examination point of view, we will be discussing why and how China has always claimed that some parts of India's territory are their territory. For example, as you know, recently China renamed certain places in Arunachal Pradesh. So we'll be discussing the background of that. We'll be discussing why China does that. What is their argument when they say Arunachal Pradesh is their part? Second topic we'll be discussing is the extreme heat. As you know, many parts of North India have already started to face extreme heat waves. There's an article in the Hindu newspaper. Why does that happen? What can we do to ensure that these heat waves do not have such a negative impact? Thirdly, we'll be discussing about Supreme Court, which is today bound to hear multiple petitions again about the same-sex marriage issue. Fourth topic will be coastal species that are living amidst plastic debris. So there is a very sad report that has come out, unfortunately. Even in our oceans right now, there are a huge amount of plastic waste. So we'll be discussing about that. Then we'll be switching on to prelims specific news stories. There's a news story from Chhattisgarh. The Chhattisgarh Chief Minister has requested the Prime Minister of India to include Chhattisgarh law about higher reservation quota in the 9th schedule. So we'll be discussing what exactly is the 9th schedule, how does it work, what is the importance of the 9th schedule. Then in Odisha, there is a new survey that was conducted about certain species of birds. We'll be discussing the findings of that survey. And in the end, we'll be discussing about what happened in WTO, why a WTO panel has ruled against India, saying that India is wrong in imposing certain import tariffs. So these are the topics that we have lined up here for you. I hope all of you are now well prepared to analyze today's newspaper. The first topic that we have taken up is Chinese shenanigans on Arunachal Pradesh. Now, as all of you know, and we have discussed this earlier as well, China recently, in an official press conference from the side of the government of China, had renamed certain places in Arunachal Pradesh. Meaning that certain places in Arunachal Pradesh were given Chinese names by the Chinese because China claims that this is their territory unofficially occupied by India. Now, this is an article that discussing number one, why China does this. Why is it that time and time again they claim that this is our territory? What is China hoping to gain out of it? And also, do they have some other disputes as well from other countries, or is it just India specifically? Now, we have discussed this in one of the earlier CNAs as well. How China renamed certain places in Arunachal Pradesh, and this is not the first time they have done this. They have earlier also given certain Chinese names to places in Arunachal Pradesh. Now let's try and understand why China says that Arunachal Pradesh is their territory. China says that they occupy Tibet. Spiritual leader of Tibet is Dalai Lama. Chinese say that Tawang, that is in Arunachal Pradesh, was actually the birthplace of the 6th Dalai Lama. That is the entire story of the Chinese argument. China says that Tawang is the birthplace of the 6th Dalai Lama. Dalai Lama, who is official, the spiritual leader of Tibet. So since Tibet is our territory, Tibet leader's birthplace should also be our territory. That is their biggest claim on Arunachal Pradesh. Now the interesting part is, and you might not like it, but in reality, if you look at how India and Chinese maps are made throughout the world, there is one version of India map that we officially have. In our official version of the map, as you know, entire Jammu and Kashmir, Arunachal Pradesh, all of this is taken as our own Indian territory. Even that part which is right now occupied by China. Aksai Chin, even that part which is officially occupied right now and officially by Pakistan, Pakistan occupied Kashmir, all of that is shown as our territory. That is the Indian version of the map. However, the sad reality is, unfortunately, when other countries make India's map, many of them do not include entire Jammu and Kashmir in our area. You also know this. You go and search on Wikipedia, you go and search India's maps, and you will see when India's maps are published by, let's say, foreign news media or foreign governments, many of them do not show the entire Jammu and Kashmir part as Indian territory. However, the reality is there is no country in the world that does not show Arunachal Pradesh as India's territory. So while Jammu and Kashmir, in eyes of certain other countries and eyes of certain other media organizations, may be a disputed territory, but for Arunachal Pradesh, there has never been any claim by any other media organization. So this is very weird. How and why is it that China is making such claims? Now, as I said earlier, it is not the first time that China is doing this, number one. The second fact is, India is not the only country with which China does this. So China has the same kind of working method. They do the same thing whenever they have certain boundary dispute with any country. For example, China has certain boundary disputes with Japan. That is called the Senkaku Island dispute. Now, the Senkaku Islands also have different names. Do you know that? Senkaku Islands are known by this name in Japan, but China has given it a different name altogether. They are saying, no, this is our territory and we can change the name. So it is not the first time that China is doing this with India. They have done this multiple times. And India is not the first country with which China is playing this dirty trick. Now, why is China doing this? Let's come to that question. Number one, China wants to show the world, see, because this is our territory, we can change the name. They think that by changing the name, their claim on a certain territory will be strengthened. This is their first idea. The second reason why China does this is they think when we change the name of a certain place, when years will pass on from generation to generation, people will start recognizing the new name. So they think, for example, that in Tibet, when next generation comes in, they will hear the new name of place in Arunachal Pradesh, because the entire idea of China is that Arunachal Pradesh is actually southern Tibet. They say that there's nothing called Arunachal Pradesh. There is Tibet and there is southern Tibet, which India calls Arunachal Pradesh. So China wants the same name, that is the name that they have given, to pass on from generations to generations. They also have made laws about it. In fact, recently, China had made a law under which all the territory that they claim to be theirs has been considered as a sovereign Chinese territory. This also is one of the ways in which China puts pressure on the other countries. There is one more theory about this, and do listen to this very carefully, okay? Some of you might not like it, but let's understand this theory. One of the theories is that China does this to India specifically. Why? Because China believes that it is US that wants to project India as a superpower. Please listen to this very carefully. China believes that US wants to project India as a superpower. China thinks that India is not a superpower. It is US who is making this whole image of India as a superpower so that the world can take India very seriously. China, on the other hand, wants to puncture that image. China wants to show to the world, see, you are calling India a superpower. We can just rename their places whenever we want. We can go to their border and do whatever we want. What kind of a superpower is this country when they can't even stop us from renaming their places? This is another theory, that China does this mainly to puncture the claims of India, America, and other Indian friends when they consider India as a superpower. China wants to say, no, India is not a superpower. We can do whatever we want. We can irritate India in whatever way that we want. Now, while China says Arunachal Pradesh is their territory, why? Because the birthplace of the 6th Dalai Lama, the 6th one, was in Tawang. But if you look at history, that is not true. It is a fact that the 6th Dalai Lama was born in Tawang, that is fine. But the reality is that Chinese control over Tibet was much after the 6th Dalai Lama's death. Even when 6th Dalai Lama was alive, China did not control Tibet. China's control over Tibet only started after the death of the 6th Dalai Lama. So China's claim that Arunachal Pradesh should be our territory is bogus. Secondly, from India's side, if you look at a lot of historical texts actually talk about Arunachal Pradesh. If you look at Arunachal Pradesh, the tribes living in Arunachal Pradesh, some of them follow Buddhism, many of them follow Hinduism. Many of the tribes in Arunachal Pradesh have always been very well connected to the Ahom tribe in Assam. The Ahom kingdom that you read about in history, they were also connected with the tribes in Arunachal Pradesh. You look at mythological texts such as Mahabharata, you look at Ramayana, you look at different types of Puran, the Vishnu Puran, Kalika Puran, Yogini Puran, all of them have a mention of a place which is the same as Arunachal Pradesh. So while China's claim on Arunachal Pradesh seems to be bogus because it is just based on the fact that the birthplace of 6th Dalai Lama was Tawang, India's claim is much more stronger. In fact, the author here suggests a very interesting idea. The author says, why should India stay silent? The author says, if China is changing the names of the territory, we should also start changing the name. For example, the Aksai Chin area, as you know, which is under the Chinese occupation, India should also go ahead and change the name. We should say that this is from now onwards called Akshay Chin. This is just a suggestion from the author. There is nothing that the government is doing about it. This is just a suggestion from the author's side. This is what the author is saying, that India should not just stay silent, should not just stay quiet. We should actually go ahead and give the same kind of treatment to China. Now, as you know, China has multiple border disputes with India. This part, Aksai Chin, has been under Chinese occupation since the 1950s. This is the McMahon line, which is the official line dividing Arunachal Pradesh and Tibet. China does not recognize this line, as we have discussed multiple times earlier as well. This McMahon line came into being because of the 1914 Simla Convention. China says that we never signed the convention, we will never be party to this. It was Tibet and British India that signed it. Because of this, China and India disputes still remain. Now, What can be China's objective? Now, there is one very interesting pattern that you will see in the past few years. The pattern is, whenever there is a very important dignitary, please understand this, whenever there is a very important dignitary who visits Arunachal Pradesh, after that it is China that makes such kind of attempts to change certain names of places in Arunachal Pradesh to claim that this is our territory. For example, when Dalai Lama a few years back visited Arunachal Pradesh, China's reaction was, okay, now we will change the name of certain places in Arunachal Pradesh. In October 2021, former Vice President of India, Shri Venkaiah Naidu, he visited Arunachal Pradesh, he addressed the assembly. China again reacted by changing the name. So China does this whenever any Indian dignitary or whenever very famous dignitary actually visits Arunachal Pradesh. So this is China's way of keeping the matter alive, keeping the matter in the news. Now, and I do see question in the chat already. What will China gain out of it? Let's assume for a moment, although it will not happen, but let's assume for a moment, hypothetically speaking, if China does get control over Arunachal Pradesh, what will happen? What will China gain out of it? It's not about gaining something out of it. It is mostly about establishing yourself as the true superpower that, see, I am so powerful, I can occupy whatever territory I want. I can occupy whatever territory I put my eyes on. No country can say anything. And the problem here also is when there is a country which is an expansionist country. The problem is an expansionist country, expansionist ideology does not stop at anything. So for example, if let's assume that the Chinese occupy a certain part, it's not that they will stop after that. After that, they may start laying claim to some other territory, saying that, oh, one of our very important leaders was born in this country, now onward this country is also ours. So this cannot be a one-time tactic. And that is why China's propaganda has to be called out. You cannot just keep on delaying the matter. You have to call out the Chinese foreign policy playbook. Their claims on different territories, not just India, but other territories also, have to be exposed. India is not the only country with which China has such territorial disputes. We know about the Chinese dispute, they lay claim to Taiwan. We know about the Senkaku Islands, where they have a claim against Japan. China, as you know, also has claims over the entire South China Sea. China says that entire South China Sea is their area. In fact, do you know a few years back there was a case in the International Court of Justice? The case was China versus Philippines. And do you know Philippines won the case? Philippines had actually won the case in which Philippines was given a part of this South China Sea as an exclusive economic zone. But China says, oh, doesn't matter, we will not accept the verdict. So China's issues are with Philippines, with Japan, Taiwan, Vietnam, Brunei. All these countries have issues with China. India is not the only one. The difference being in most of these countries, the issue that China has is about the exclusive economic zone. So it's about the water and the resources of water. No population lives there. In case of India, the problem is, and the reason why the dispute is different, in case of India, China is laying claim to a state of India, which is a sovereign territory of India where there's an Indian government, where there's a state government, there are elections that are held, people live, and that is why there is that difference between these kind of disputes. This was our first article for the day. Let me quickly take up a few comments from your end. After that, we'll jump on to the second article. Okay, I have a question from Ashu. Why Western countries are not imposing, I think you mean to say sanctions. Okay, why Western countries are not imposing sanctions on China? See, it's not that easy. Right now, the entire world's economies depend on China. China is the world's factory. US, Europe, they trade with China in huge numbers, huge numbers. So when you put sanctions on a country, your objective is that that country should be hurt and your economy should not be hurt. But by putting sanctions on China, it is their own economy that will be hurt. So it's just not possible right now because of the integration of Chinese economy, Chinese manufacturing with other parts of the world. It's just not possible to put sanctions on China. Okay, then Shweta is saying plebiscite can be done in these disputed areas. No, Shweta, there is no law in India about plebiscite or referendum. These are not Indian concepts. So, and the other part is, why should we do a plebiscite? It is our territory. Tomorrow if China says Delhi is our territory, China says Mumbai is our territory, Goa is our territory. So would you go on and having plebiscite in Chennai, Goa, Mumbai, asking them, do you want to go to China, do you want to remain India? No. Why would, if I come to your house tomorrow and I say, this is my house, would you want to have a plebiscite? No, you will say, this is my house. What is the concept of plebiscite? Nothing. Okay. Then I have a question. Why don't India interfere in Tibet? See, India has never been a country that interferes in any country as such. So it's not a concept of why would we interfere in Tibet, number one. Secondly, China says India has already interfered in Tibet because India has given asylum, has given a home to the Dalai Lama. China says that this is illegal. So as per China, India has already interfered in Tibet, but India doesn't interfere in any other country. Our motto has always been, you live your own life, we live our own life, as simple as that. Okay, I would request, don't copy paste the same comment time and time again. You are just hiding others' comments, which is unfair. And also, if you just keep on pasting your comment time and time again, I would deliberately not take it. Okay, I'll take one or two more comments and then I'll move on. ICJ judgments are, see, the International Court of Justice is very unique kind of a body. Its judgments are not binding. The concept is the International Court of Justice, when they give a judgment, the responsibility of implementing the judgment is actually with the UN Security Council. So just imagine the UN Security Council, the 5 permanent members, they have the responsibility of implementing the judgment. And in the UN Security Council, China is a permanent member. So why would they want to implement that judgment? It is not just China. Whenever there is a decision of the International Court of Justice against any of the permanent members, like USA or Russia, they never implement it. They just ignore it because they know they are powerful. So let's not say China is the only country that ignores the judgments of ICJ. US has also done this multiple times in the past as well. Okay, let's move on then to the second article that we want to discuss. This is about extreme heat. Now, those of you who are living in North India, and not just North India, in fact, to be true, heat wave has now expanded to almost all parts of India. I know, I was talking to a friend from Delhi yesterday. In Delhi, I think the temperatures have gone above 40 degree already. In UP also, in most parts of UP, it has gone above 40 degree. Even the cities where you think the weather is very good always, even in Bangalore, there is a lot of heat. So almost the entire country right now is facing heat wave, and this is not even the beginning of the peak summer season. Now, why is this happening? What is the reason behind it? Can we do something about it or not? Now, when you talk about heat waves or when you talk about the changing climatic patterns, there are two things to understand. Some of the reasons are man-made that you can control, and some of the reasons are not man-made, they are natural. Like for example, if the sun has decided that it will come out, if this time of the year we do have heat, we do have the sun beating on us, this is natural and we can't just hide the sun already. This is just not possible. However, what we are doing is that we are making matters even worse for ourselves because of a lot of man-made mistakes. What are those man-made mistakes? This is what the article talks about. The author here says that if you look at the average temperature in the cities, year on year the average temperature is increasing. For example, between 1990 and 2019, so in these 29 years, average temperature increased by 0.5 to 0.9 degrees across various states in India. In fact, there is also something called the urban heat island effect. I'm sure all of you would have heard about this. Urban heat island effect. The idea is simple. For example, let's say if this is a city, highly populated, it has a lot of construction, it has a lot of development, and there's a village nearby the city. The idea is simple, that in the city, the temperature will be much higher as compared to the nearby villages. This is called the urban island effect. As per reports, in the cities, the temperature can be 4 to 12 degree higher as compared to the nearby rural areas. And there are a lot of reasons because of this. The reasons behind this is, number one, there's a lot of concrete that has been built up. Trees have been cut down, the water bodies have already evaporated. All of this construction, there is no ventilation as such. All of this construction brings about this urban heat island effect. That is why the cities in India especially face much more heat, and it's a vicious cycle. For example, you are living in, let's say, Delhi. You feel more heat as compared to nearby villages, so you run more air conditioners. When you run more air conditioners, you actually just increase that effect. Because of all the exhaust of the air conditioners, the average temperature is increasing even more. And that is why the urban heat island effect is a very, very, very serious thing. Also, the climatic patterns are different across different areas. For example, the author has given an example of Rajasthan and Gujarat. 90% of India's cumin production, do you know what cumin is? In Hindi you call it jeera. Just jeera or cumin, whatever you want to call it. 90% of cumin production in India is from Gujarat and Rajasthan only. Now these kind of crops, whenever you have these kind of crops, they grow in a certain climatic condition. When you increase the temperature too much or when you decrease the temperature too much, that crop will not grow. Similarly, because jeera's production mostly is in Rajasthan, the variable weather conditions in Rajasthan are actually destroying this crop. There have been multiple agricultural crop losses from Rajasthan. That is why these weather patterns, extreme heat is not just uncomfortable, it can even lead to declining agricultural production. And declining agricultural production may later on lead to famine situations as well. All of these become very, very dangerous in the coming times. Now, as you know, the rising temperature is especially problematic for those who are working outdoors. Meaning that those who are workers, especially the migrant workers, those who are working outdoors, it is very, very, very bad for them. For example, we are lucky enough right now, the place where I'm teaching you from, I have an air conditioner. That is why I'm able to wear a 2-layered dress. But the outdoor workers are not that lucky. They can't just sit in the shade and say, oh, I will not go out in the heat. If they have to earn their income, they would have to go out. Think about the Manrega workers. Think about the construction workers. Can they say, no, 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 we will only work when there's an air conditioner, we will not work otherwise? Because of the problematic situations, because of the poor conditions of our workers, they are the ones who face the most problems. In fact, 50% of India's workforce is estimated to be exposed to heat during their working hours. And they can't take it off, they can't say, I will work from home today. Because if they say they will work from home today, they will not earn that day's income. That is why the urban landscape is such important. As per multiple reports, cutting down of trees, overt use of concrete, not having enough ventilation, all of these have led to these problems. Cities such as Delhi, etc. also suffer from this. The kind of materials that we are using, for example, concrete, etc., are very, very harmful for the environment in the long run. They are not allowing the water to permeate to the ground level. That is why we also have other situations where the water level is declining. Earlier, see, the situation is simple. If this is soil and this is concrete, if there is rainfall that is falling down, this rainwater can go through the soil and it will be a part of our groundwater level. But if the rain falls on concrete, it will not go anywhere. It will just accumulate here and the water will get wasted. So all these problems, the kind of construction materials that we are using, all these are leading to this kind of an issue. Ideally, we should have permeable structures. We should have brick jalis for ventilation, etc. We have done this in certain cities. There are certain planned cities in India. For example, Chandigarh is an example of a greatly planned city. Chandigarh, for example, has areas earmarked for forest, that these will be forest areas, there will be no construction there. Chandigarh also has many other different types of markations that on this area, no construction will be allowed, on this area, concrete will not be built, etc. But most of Indian cities, even the bigger cities, are not planned in this manner. Most of the people use their personal vehicles. We don't use public transportation. That also leads to pollution. All of these factors can actually help us in controlling this extreme weather condition. As I said, yes, some factors are natural. You cannot control that. On the other hand, there are some factors which are artificial, which are in our hand and which can be controlled as per the author. Now, as I said, the author uses an example of urban heat islands. Now, what are urban heat islands? Urban heat islands, as we discussed, the urban areas, because of their construction, because of their way of living, usually have higher temperature as compared to nearby rural areas or as compared to nearby villages. This is called urban heat island effect. Usually it is seen that cities will have a temperature 3 to 5 degrees Celsius more as compared to the nearby villages. There are various reasons for that: construction activities, architecture, air conditioning, lack of trees, lack of green areas, lack of ventilation, all of that. If you are from a village, you would know that when you actually sit under a tree, even when it is a very hot day, you sit under a tree, you will see a lot of relief. And just imagine when you're in the city, you don't have that option. In the cities, there are not many ways in which you can actually get rid of that heat. There is one more very interesting thing that you must know. There is something called a wet bulb temperature. Now, what is a wet bulb temperature? In simple terms, the one-line definition of wet bulb temperature is, it is the lowest temperature to which an air can be cooled by evaporation of water into the air at a constant pressure. This is a temperature which is indicated by moistened thermometer bulb which is exposed to the airflow. Please do remember this one-line definition of wet bulb temperature. This is important. This is the lowest temperature to which the air can be cooled down by evaporation of water into the air at a constant pressure. Now tell me this, or I'll give you a homework. After the video ends, you have to tell me in the comment section what is the relationship between the wet bulb temperature and humidity. Is there any relation between the two? When the video ends, do think about it and tell me in the comment section. Just look at this definition, think about what is humidity, and you will be able to connect the two very easily. Just imagine what will be the impact of humidity. For example, if humidity is high, the wet bulb temperature will be higher or lower. Or if the humidity is lower, what will be the impact on the wet bulb temperature? Try and see this, try and imagine and write down in the comment section later on. Let's see if you are able to understand this. This is not very difficult to understand. This is the impact of the wet bulb temperature. Before we move on to the next article, let me quickly take up a few comments once again. Okay, inversely or directly, whatever proportion it is, please tell me in the comment section later on in the video. Okay, Kishan is saying, as per IPCC, short span of 0.4 degrees Celsius window, ineffective utilization of Campa isn't indicating we should accelerate control temperature. Yeah, I do agree with the fact that Campa funds are not utilized well. Multiple reports have suggested that Campa funds need to be utilized better. So yes, I can't defend the government on that. Okay. Pawan is saying, what is famine situation? Pawan, famine or famine means when there is not enough food. When there is not enough food to eat, not enough food for population, people start dying of hunger. That is called famine. Okay. Raju, I've already discussed the reasons for heat islands. So you can just expand on these and you will be able to answer that question. Okay. Ashu is saying on rising heat waves, can it affect ozone layer? No, ozone layer is not affected by rising heat waves. That's a different concept altogether. Okay. Muskan, I don't know. Okay, Muskan is saying why rainbow is shown in LGBTQ. I can take a guess. Maybe it talks about including all the colors, including people of every kind together. Maybe that. But it can be a different reason altogether, so please don't trust me on that. Okay. I'll take one more and then we'll go ahead. Is starvation equal to famine? See, starvation is a singular concept, single person. Famine is a population-wide concept. So for example, when a person dies of the fact that he or she could not get enough food, you don't say that person died of famine. You say that that person died of starvation. But when thousands of people die, then you say they died of famine. So that is the difference between the two. So starvation is an individual term. When an individual dies, when two people die, you say they died of starvation. On the other hand, when you say that there is a population-wide phenomena, that is famine. Okay, let's go ahead then. The next article that we have is again on one of those topics that we did discuss multiple times in the past few weeks. That's a question of same-sex marriage. Supreme Court has been hearing the matter multiple times. The issue is very simple. Multiple people have gone to Supreme Court arguing that same-sex marriage should be allowed. However, the government is against same-sex marriage. Now, in India, what is the concept? As I said, in India, same-sex marriage is not allowed so far. Although homosexuality has been decriminalized, but official marriage of people belonging to the same sex is still not allowed in India. Today, Supreme Court is scheduled to hear a matter where multiple petitions have been filed on this issue. Now, there are multiple arguments given on both sides. Let me give a list of those arguments. From the side of the government and religious institutions. So, government and religious institutions are against this. They are saying that no, this is against our culture. This is against our society. This is against our family values. And you can add similar types of words here as you see in movies, dialogues. This is against our culture, family, etc. Then on the other side, we have the petitioners. They are saying that they deserve this. Why? Because they have the right to equality. Also, they are saying this is a natural phenomena. And the other argument is many countries have already accepted this. Many nations have already passed laws and they have made it legal to have same-sex marriage. So this is the two-side story. So, however, Supreme Court has still not decided on the matter. They will be hearing this petition today. As per the petitioners, the LGBTQ population is not very small in India. They say 7 to 8% of India's population is of LGBTQ+, and that is why they also have the right to be protected. They also have the right to equality. They should not be discriminated against. They should be allowed to marry the person of their choice. On the other hand, there are some other government institutions that have spoken against it. The argument that the petitioners give is in countries where same-sex marriage has been allowed, same-sex marriage couples or same-sex couples have actually been in a much healthier relationship as compared to others. For example, a study in 2020 by American Sociological Review showed that children raised by same-sex parents outperformed those with heterosexual parents. One argument of people against this concept is that children will not be brought up fine. Who will take care of the children? They need a mother and they need a father. But in this study, it was seen that children who were raised by a same-sex couple did actually perform better. Government says no, we will not take this up. Government says this is just an urban elitist view. We don't agree to this. Government in fact says Supreme Court has no right to decide this. Government says this is a policy matter. This is a matter which the legislature should decide. So we will decide whether or not any same-sex marriage should be allowed or not. Government for now has been against this. Even the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights is against this idea. They are saying that a children need both parents as mother and father. As per the National Commission on Protection of Child Rights, it will be unjust for the parent, for the child, if the child doesn't get the affection, the love from both father and the mother, and that is why they are against this argument. Religious bodies also, as I said, as expected, are more conservative. Religious bodies, irrespective of whatever religion that you think of, most of the religious bodies are against the idea of same-sex marriage. For example, Shri Sanatan Dharma Pratinidhi Sabha has said that same-sex marriage is catastrophic. It will be against the society. Similarly, Jamaat Ulama-e-Hind, they have also said same-sex marriage is against the basic feature of the marriage. We should not allow this. So there are arguments on both sides of the story. The ball is in the court of the Supreme Court now to decide whether or not they would have to, or whether or not they would allow this marriage to go on or not. There are arguments on both sides of the story. We have discussed this earlier as well. There are arguments in favor of this. Main argument being that they also deserve the right to equality. Multiple reports have suggested that these families are strong. Multiple reports have also suggested that let's assume that there's a person who is gay. Let's just assume this for a moment, that there's a person who is gay. Now, if you force that person to marry a female when he doesn't want to marry a female, there are more chances of that marriage breaking up. On the other hand, if you allow that person to marry the person of his choice, that means a much happier family. That is also an argument. The other argument, as I said, multiple countries have accepted this. 32 countries have already accepted same-sex marriage. Now, I would like to repeat here, and I hope all of you understand, India has decriminalized homosexuality. So in India, having physical relationship with the person of the same sex is not a crime anymore. However, in India, same-sex marriage is still not allowed. There is a difference between the two. Please do understand. It's not just India, across the world. Although 133 countries have decriminalized homosexuality, only 32 have made it legal to have same-sex marriage. On the other hand, there are arguments against as well. As we discussed, religious cultural beliefs. Procreation means how will they give birth to a child? The entire cycle of how a natural child is born, that will be destroyed. Although, yes, there will always be options of surrogacy, there will always be options of adoption, etc. But they say that this is against nature, against how nature actually wanted man to live. And there will be legal issues as well. We don't have laws right now about how property will be inherited in same-sex marriage. We don't have laws about how the divorce will work, etc. And that is why there are arguments against this as well. This was the third article, and as I see in the chat, this kind of an article brings in a lot of diverse reactions from everyone. Some people in support of it no matter what, some people against it no matter what. I would just advise you, doesn't matter whatever is your argument in your mind, that is fine. You may be in support of this, you may be against this, that is absolutely fine. However, you have to understand the argument from both the sides. That is my only request to you. For example, in the interview, you may be asked about both sides of the story. So don't be so rigid that because I support a certain topic, I will only talk about supporting it. I will not talk about anything against it. Or just because you are against it, I will speak so much against it that I will not even say a single word in favor of it. Don't be that. Just have argument from both sides of the story. That is what my suggestion will be to all of you. Okay, let me take up a few comments quickly and then we will go ahead. Sir, so many people have done this. No, in India, same-sex marriage is not allowed. So no, in India, you cannot officially have a same-sex marriage till now. Yes, Kavi, marijuana and same-sex marriage, they do draw a lot of attention. I'll tell you one more topic that draws a lot of attention, that is reservation. So I know what topic whenever we discuss will draw a lot of attention. It's not just that, it's reservation also. Some people are really in support of it, some people are really against it, but whatever be your view. Okay, then I have an interesting comment. Why people are so concerned about LGBTQ but don't raise issues related to disabled people. People talking about them is not so cool. I don't know if it is cool or not cool. I don't know about that. But it's unfair to say that people don't raise attention or people don't raise issue of disabled people. All their issues are also raised up. It's not that their issues have not been raised. The idea is what catches more attention. And you can take an example of here itself. In the class today, if we would have discussed a topic on the rights of disabled people, then how much interest it would have got in the chat as compared to how much interest this topic is getting. So you can just compare how much attention usually people give to such topics. It's not that their rights or their topics or their questions are not raised, even their questions are raised. And I'll just give one more argument here and then we'll go with. The reason why you will see a lot of people having very strong views on this topic specifically, is because people believe that it will propagate in the society. That is what people believe. People think that, oh, and again, you might not like it, but people believe that, for example, there's a straight guy. Let's take an example, that there's a straight guy like me, and I see someone who is in a same-sex relationship. Then people believe that I will also now start to explore same-sex relationship because I saw someone else. So people believe that society will change because of this, but that doesn't happen. That is why many people are against this. People's argument, or the people who are conservative, their argument is if someone is allowed to do this, other people will also do this. Other people will be impacted by it, affected by it, whatever word you want to use. That is their argument. Anyways, let's go ahead then. The next topic that we want to discuss is an unfortunate news. Plastic has reached everywhere. Plastic is not just in your kitchen, in your bags, in your tiffin boxes. Plastic is now also in the ocean and in the deepest parts of the ocean. So congratulations, we have done the unthinkable. We have made sure that our plastic has reached every part of the world, even where there is no human species. So congrats. Now the article basically is about a term. That term is called Anthropocene epoch. Now some scientists basically have come up with a new term. The scientists have said that this term should be given to a new period in history, a period in history where human beings have changed everything. We have made sure that the environment is worse than ever. We have made sure that violence is more than ever. We have made sure that the plastics are everywhere. We have made sure the pollution is more than ever. So as per the scientists, there should be a new name given to this era where human beings have impacted all the life around us. That should be called Anthropocene epoch. Now this is based on a report that has identified plastic trash even in the deepest oceans. Now this is a phrase that is used in this article. The phrase is called Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Now what exactly is this? In geography you all would have read about gyres. You all would have read about gyres, right? Now as per the scientists, there was a study conducted on North Pacific subtropical gyre. Over here it was seen that about 45,000 to 1,29,000 lakh metric tons of plastics was found. That is microplastics. This study was conducted in the Pacific Ocean. When the scientists saw all these microplastics, they tried to identify from which country is it coming in. They tried to identify what material is it, does it say the name of manufacturer or company, etc. It was seen that most of it came from Japan and some of it even came from North America. So North America and Japan, these are the two regions to blame specifically for this plastic pollution in the Pacific Ocean, but it is not the only study that is conducted. This is just a sample size taken from the Pacific Ocean. But if you actually see all around the world, if such kind of studies are conducted, we will see that similar kind of patterns will emerge in similar types of microplastics and their samples will come out. The bottom line being that microplastics are right now everywhere and not just on land, not just beneath our land, but they are now even in the ocean. Now, the important question is, how do you define a microplastic? In simple terms, plastics less than 5 millimeter in diameter, they are considered as microplastic. They are smaller in diameter than the standard pearl used in the jewelry. Even microplastics are of two types. Do remember this. Primary microplastics, they are tiny particles which are mainly for commercial use. They are usually used in clothing, other textiles, etc. Then there are secondary microplastics also. They are formed by breaking down of larger plastics such as water bottles, etc. But all these microplastics are extremely dangerous because they are very, very, very difficult, almost impossible to recycle. Also, the amount of plastic, the amount of waste that we recycle around the world is much, much lower as compared to the waste that we produce. That is why we are not even able to handle the waste produced on our land, let alone the waste that is produced, or let alone the waste that exists around the ocean. Around the world, there are certain initiatives that have been taken in this regard. I would advise you to remember these initiatives. There are initiatives at the global level and initiatives at India level also. Globally, for example, we have Global Partnership on Marine Litter. It was launched in 2012, where the countries agreed that we will try and control wastewater, we'll reduce plastics, etc. from wastewater. Similarly, we have the Glow Litter Partnership Project. This is a project between IMO and FAO to reduce marine plastic litter from shipping and fisheries. Long time back, we had a London Convention of 1972 that also talked about prevention of marine pollution by dumping waste. Now, these kind of facts can be asked in the prelims as well. For example, in the prelims, you can get a question which says, London Convention of 1972 is related to which of the following? So you must know that it is related to marine pollution, it's related to dumping waste and other matters in waters around the world. So do remember these facts. You can quote these as examples in your mains exam also, and the prelims exam, this can also be asked. India has also tried to take certain initiatives to eliminate plastic use. In 2019, for example, the Prime Minister announced that we will be trying to eliminate single-use plastic in the country by 2022. There was an immediate ban on most of the cities. In most of the cities right now, if you go to your marketplaces, etc., you will not find single-use plastic. We also have plastic waste management rules of 2016 that talk about segregation of waste. For example, in most of the big cities now, when from your household you hand over waste to municipality or you hand over waste outside your house, you have to segregate it. The wet waste have to be separate, the dry waste has to be separate, etc. We also have the Unplastic Collective UPC. It is an initiative by UNEP India and CII along with WWF. This is again to ensure that our levels of pollution decline, more specifically pollutions due to plastic. These are the important articles that we had from the mains point of view. Let's now quickly move on, switch gears to discuss some prelims specific articles that we had. We have about 3 of them which I want to discuss with you. The first one, very important for Indian polity. I'm sure in Indian polity, all of you would have read about the schedules. In the 12 schedules, all of you would have read about the 9th schedule as well. Let me quickly give you the background story of 9th schedule so that you understand, if just in case you don't. So when India got independence, we had one big problem. The one big problem was about how the land was distributed. Try and understand this. So when the British left India, what they did was, people who were friends of the British, people who were close to the British gave them a lot of land. They said, oh, entire village is yours. They said to someone, this entire coal mine we are giving to you, this entire piece of land, huge amount of land was given to some people. So the problem was, when the British left, some people had a lot of land and most people did not have any land in India. Now the government of India had to redistribute the land. The government of India started introducing land reforms. For example, the government of India put a land ceiling. That is, there was a limit put on the maximum amount of land a single person can own. Then there was a family-wise ceiling also put. So there were a lot of laws Indian government tried to introduce in the very beginning to ensure that the land reforms were successful. But the problem was, in the Constitution of India, we had fundamental right to property, which doesn't exist now, but earlier we used to have fundamental right to property. So whenever the government of India tried to introduce these kind of laws, that we will take away your land or we'll put a land ceiling, people used to go to Supreme Court saying that it is a violation of their right to property. So government of India, in the very first amendment of the Constitution, first Constitutional Amendment 1951, decided to introduce a new schedule called the Ninth Schedule. The idea was very simple. The idea was, any law placed in the Ninth Schedule will not be open to judicial review. That was a simple idea. That if the government passes a law, that law is placed in the Ninth Schedule, then judicial review will not exist on it. Supreme Court will not be able to strike down the law. When this was passed, Ninth Schedule was mainly for the land reforms only, so that the government could introduce laws about land reforms and the Supreme Court should not be able to strike it down. However, later on, Ninth Schedule began to be misused. A lot of laws which the government did not want the judiciary to strike down, the government started to put all of those laws in the Ninth Schedule. For example, right now, Ninth Schedule has about close to 284 laws in the Ninth Schedule. Many people say this is misused by the government so that their laws are not struck down by the Supreme Court. Mostly about reservation. Whenever the government thinks that their laws about reservation will be struck down by the court, they place a law in the Ninth Schedule. For example, Tamil Nadu has much more than 50% reservation. How is that allowed? Because their law is placed in the Ninth Schedule. Now come to the story. Chhattisgarh is also now requesting the central government to do the same for them. Chhattisgarh recently passed a law that will now have 76% quota for scheduled caste, scheduled tribe and other backward classes. They know that the Supreme Court limit is only 50%. Chhattisgarh knows that their 76% law will be struck down. So they are requesting the central government to place this law in the Ninth Schedule. This is the entire idea. They want reservation to go up to 76% in Chhattisgarh. To protect the law from the judicial review, they want it to be placed in the Ninth Schedule. As I said, Ninth Schedule was introduced in First Constitutional Amendment Act of 1951. Initially, only 13 laws were added, but with time, a lot of other laws were added. It has about 284 laws now. The idea is simple. The government does not want these laws to be under judicial review. The government wants that Ninth Schedule laws should be over and above judicial review. However, the question is a law placed in the Ninth Schedule completely beyond the Supreme Court's powers? Can any law be placed in the Ninth Schedule and the Supreme Court will not say anything? No. There was an important Supreme Court case called IR Colo 2007. In this case, Supreme Court said no. This will not be allowed. We will not close our eyes just because a law is placed in the Ninth Schedule. The Supreme Court said any law that is placed in the Ninth Schedule, if it violates Article 14, 19, 21, or if it violates the basic structure of the Constitution, then we will not allow the law. So in simple terms, laws placed in the 9th schedule do not have complete immunity from judicial review. Please do remember that. Supreme Court said this in the IR Coelho case. One other very interesting part. Supreme Court said that this will apply from 24th April 1973, meaning that any law placed in the 9th schedule after this date will be checked. If it is in violation of these articles or basic structure, it will be struck down. Now tell me this, why this date, by the way? Why was this date chosen? Why is it that this date was chosen, that any law placed in the 9th schedule after this date will be checked? Okay, I am getting a lot of comments about Keshwar and the Bharti case. I am very sad to say that you don't seem to be fans of cricket. This is actually Sachin Tendulkar's birthday. This is actually Sachin Tendulkar's birthday. But no, this is not because of that, although the fact is true. This is because of the Keshwar and the Bharti case. It was a Keshwar and the Bharti case which was decided on this date. That was the day that was decided, or that was the day that demarcated India into the basic structure era and before the basic structure era. And this was a date that we had Sachin Tendulkar born in India. So yes, very important day for India for multiple reasons, as you can see. Okay, the next article that we have, very short news. There was a census conducted about a specific bird called mangrove pitta birds. This was a census conducted in the coastal districts of Odisha. In this census, 179 of these birds were found. Now please do remember about this species of the bird. They are nearly threatened and they are found in eastern India, mainly in Bhitarkanika in Odisha and Sundarbans in West Bengal. There is not much apart from this that you need to remember from this news story. From this news story, only remember this part, that is, where have they been found, in what district, and what is their status. The status is nearly threatened. This is the bird that we are talking about. There is no other important news about this bird that you must remember. Just remember the name. The name is mangrove pitta bird. It has been seen in Bhitarkanika and in Sundarbans, and they are in the near threatened category. Now moving on to the last article for the day. The last news story is from the WTO. Now, WTO panel has decided that India was wrong in imposing import duty on IT products. The simple idea is, India had made a rule that when IT products are imported from certain countries, India will put import taxes. First, the European Union filed a case against India. Then Japan and Taiwan also fought a case against India, saying that this is a violation of the global trading rules. India, unfortunately, has lost the case. India has been told that you cannot have different types of rules for different countries. You have to have same kind of rules for all the countries. Doesn't matter from where you are importing the products. Now, what exactly is this case all about? Let's try and understand this. So basically, the idea is simple. India decided that we will put 20% import duty on these products, that is IT products coming in from different countries. These IT products basically are used for conversion, transmission of voice, image, data, etc. Which countries did not like it? Japan, Taiwan, sorry Xi Jinping, I'm calling Taiwan a country, but let's call Taiwan a country. So Japan, Taiwan were not happy, they filed a case. EU was the first one to file a case. They said that India is wrong in imposing these tariffs because as per the WTO IT agreement, they said as per WTO IT agreement, these products should come in the 0% category. They said that these products are being taxed by India illegally. India is not following the IT agreement that is fine by the WTO. India should not be allowed to put these kind of tariffs. Now, this also shows you that India and our relationship with other countries is different in different platforms. For example, India and Japan relationship can be very different in other platforms. But in WTO, we may be fighting a case against each other. Similarly, India-US relationship, for example, can be very different at some other platforms, but in WTO, we may be fighting a case against each other. In case of China, India-China usually are on the same page in WTO, but on all the platforms, they are fighting against each other. So it really depends upon what platform you're talking about. Our bilateral relationship with some other country does not really remain the same at all different platforms. It depends on platform to platform. We may have great relationship with one country, but with the same country, we may be fighting a case in the WTO. Now, what is this IT agreement that the countries are talking about? This was an agreement that came up in 1996. The idea was simple: to reduce the trade barriers for ICT industry, that is information communication technology. Also, India is a signatory to this. So the original agreement was in 1996. Then there was a second phase of this agreement that is called IT Agreement 2. This IT Agreement 2 is something that came up in 2015. Under this, the countries were asked to gradually reduce the import duty to zero. The import duty should come down to zero. India has decided not to participate till now. India thinks that our IT industry is still at the nascent stage. If we start importing all these IT products without imposing any taxes, it will harm us. Because when you import all these commodities without putting any taxes, that means your own local manufacturing industry will be harmed. And that is why India is not a part of the IT agreement phase 2. This brings us to the end of today's discussion. Reminding you once again, number one, about the All India test series that is going on. The full length test is open for all of you. You have to use the link given in the description of the video. Do register for this test. Check your preparation against everyone else. Also, as soon as the session ends, you have to go over to our Telegram channel. Attend the quiz based on the articles that we have discussed. There are a couple of practice questions for all of you. First, India's response to China's name-changing propaganda should be a similar move and not silence. Do you agree? Discuss. Second, how can we reduce the impact of extreme heat in urban areas in India? Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you tomorrow, 10 a.m. once again. Bye-bye. Have a good day. Jai Hind.